Amazing. Okay, hello and welcome. This is one of our first Pride events. This is an intersex panel, and thank you so much for joining us today. We're delighted to have two amazing panelists here with us, and we've got a week full of fun events you can check out on our page. But yeah, so welcome. And do you want to introduce yourselves? I'll go to Clara first there.
Right, presumptively unmuted myself there. Hi, everyone. It's weird to be not talking to a crowd, but talking to a crowd at the same time. But I'm Clara. I use she, her pronouns, and I am an intersex advocate. I work with a small group up and coming called Intersex Ireland, alongside Jessica, who might go next.
Hi, I'm Jessica. I come from Brazil and live in Ireland for the last 5 years. I worked in Brazil in a Bride, that's the Brazilian Association of Intersex, and now I work in Intersex Ireland with Clara.
Amazing, thank you so much. I realised I didn't introduce myself. My name is Leon and I use they, them pronouns, and this year I'm a Pride committee member, Galway Pride committee member, and I'm actually intersex myself and I'm trying to learn more things. So I'm not involved with all the groups like these lovely people are, but yeah, so I'm learning more today as well, so thank you.
Okay, it's definitely a process as we'll kind of learn through the next hour, I suppose. Yeah, so I mean, the way we wanted to approach it was to do a little bit of an introduction section, and then we might have a bit of a discussion. So I will start sharing my screen. So I find with intersex, you have to go right back to the very beginning and introduce people to the very concept of what intersex is. So it's a variation in your sexual characteristics, and that encompasses 5 different kind of aspects of sex, as you see there. So your gonads, genitalia, but also less obvious things like chromosomes, hormones, and secondary sexual characteristics such as breast development, etc. Intersex people are often described as having combinations of what's thought of as male and what's thought of as female biology, or something outside of what's thought of as typically male and typically female features. So in many instances, there's no obvious indication that a person is intersex, as in you can't look at someone and tell straight away that they are intersex. In fact, the most common stages of life in which someone kind of learns that they are intersex is at birth, going through a puberty that's even stranger than a regular puberty is strange, when they experience infertility. And other than that, some intersex variations don't get discovered at all. Having said that, it is super common to be intersex. About 1.75% of the global population is intersex, which is about the same number of people who have naturally red hair, a fave fact of mine. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit of an intro. Because I suppose it's so misunderstood, people get a little bit nervous about dealing with bodies and lives and situations that they can't really relate to and don't understand. People are quite nervous of change and all that. And I think that's a big part of the reason why intersex children are at risk for medically unnecessary intervention. And it's because it's difficult for sometimes parents and doctors to look at a child that looks different than something they've experienced before and have confidence that that child can grow up happy and healthy. There tends to be a worry that that child will be bullied, will be confused about their identity, And there's unfortunately an attitude that like if you intervene at an early age, all of that goes away, when in reality, the experience of intersex adults, which hopefully we'll get into later, tells you that actually that just causes, as it says there, physical and psychological harm. And that's in particular because, like I said, these interventions are happening far too often without consent. So most interventions happen before the age of 2. So naturally, can't consent. This is one that I've come across as a misunderstanding. I often get asked if I'm non-binary when I describe myself as intersex, and it's not the same thing. Obviously, gender is distinct from sex. Intersex people have all sexual orientations and all gender identities. How to be an ally. I mean, I suppose the main things that I encourage people to do is learn about intersex from intersex people, which you're all doing here today, so thank you very much. Use intersex inclusive language. A lot of people ask me, what does that mean? And I've never come across someone who uses trans inclusive language who isn't also using intersex inclusive language. So it's things like not gendering body parts, not assuming pronouns, etc. Educate others. Don't assume that intersex is a medical condition. So a lot of intersex variations do not require any medical intervention at all. An intersex person can be entirely healthy and just have a variation in their sexual characteristics, not necessarily medicalized. Include in your discussions about human rights. We're often kind of overlooked in those spaces by people who aren't intersex. And on the flip side of that, don't talk about intersex people only to win arguments about gender. We are very complicated people with rich interior lives, and we're not there to help you win arguments against small-minded people who think that there are only 2 genders. If that's the only time that the word intersex comes out of your mouth, you need to kind of reassess how you deal with that. It would be my opinion. When you're lucky enough to meet intersex people, it may or may not be a big part of their identity. I scream and shout about it. Jessica screams and shouts about it. A lot of people are very quiet about it because there can be a lot of stigma and shame attached to it. And equally, it's not anybody's kind of duty to talk about being intersex, and it's not, it's not obligatory that you share all aspects of being intersex. A lot of intersex people won't be comfortable doing that, especially with people who are not also intersex. Raise questions broadly kind of makes sense and goes with the next point down. Ensure that questions don't serve to stigmatize or fetishize. People can kind of ask questions that are quite personal and quite uncomfortable in relation to what a body looks like and what you've been through in terms of surgery, etc. Just approach these things very sensitively. And, maybe unless you know an intersex person on a very personal level, perhaps don't necessarily request or expect that they'll get into the nitty-gritty of that with you. This is actually from a brochure that was produced by organization Intersex International, and I thought it was really well done in terms of outlining kind of key goals of intersex advocates in the intersex community. Full implementation of human rights, bodily integrity, and self-determination. Legal prohibition of non-consensual interventions. And then obviously it kind of goes on to specify that psychological and medical treatment can certainly occur once someone has kind of attained an age to consent to that, and kind of, an informed consent kind of model. Full protection against discrimination and the adoption of sex characteristics as a protected ground, because as we've kind of touched on, we're not quite covered by sex and we're not quite covered by gender. And then just an education of society on intersex issues from a human rights perspective. That's kind of the whistle stop, super whistle stop tour. I don't know if before we jump into questions, Jessica wants to add anything. I know you probably have loads to add there.
Yeah, I want to add in two aspects. The first one is about what we want. And I think that something that's really important, that's not much discussed, is that the holy control about talking about intersex are done by non-intersex people. The people who says, oh, we need to do the surgery because it's necessary and yada, 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 and then put like a list of 10 things that are a lie, are doctors, are endosex doctors. So one thing that we are trying to do is like nothing about us without us. So now we speak about intersex people without conferring an intersex person. That's one thing. And another thing that I think that's really important to say is that the surgery in babies, that is like the main cause of intersex rights, started by Dr. John Money. And I think most people know John Money because of the case of David Hamer, that was used especially to say, oh, look, what I theorized, that gender can be included in someone, work it so we can do surgeries in intersex people, was more or less like that. Before, in his PhD, he interviewed 350 intersex people that at the time they called the hermaphrodites. And he constated that all these people were very happy. There is no one feeling like depression or anything. The people live their lives. If their genitals were made them uncomfortable, they when they got to adulthood, they have gone and had the surgery. So even through he constated that there is no problem, he started to do this medicalization of intersex people. So and then the fun part is that the people now, they use like, oh, we have no proof, you have no theory, we have no studies, articles, or no science that says that if you don't do the surgery, the children will be okay. But we also have no studies that saying that if you do the surgery, the children are okay too, because most of them are not okay. We don't know right now.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I just wanted to really like hone in on some of the stuff that Jessica said and really just signpost to some further reading on that, because that's some really big stuff that Jessica's just put out there to consider, and it's all super important. So Interact, which is probably the largest intersex organization in the world, it's the US-based organization, have some fabulous resources on their website. The best one, if you're interested in reading more about what Jessica was talking about, is called Common Arguments from Doctors. And that just lays out the most common reasons that doctors give that these surgeries aren't necessary, and basically debunks them. And one of the things it actually mentions leads me on to another thing that Jessica mentioned, is that doctors in fact, definitely make the claim that intersex adults are happier when they've had interventions, and it disputes that in that document. And kind of further to that, that's one of the struggles that I think intersex advocates face on a regular basis, a lack of data around intersex lives, intersex experience, lack of kind of hard proof of what's happening to us. And I wanted to mention a project that Jessica and I were involved in, called Mapping Intersex Lives, human researchers at DCU that are trying to kind of sort that problem out by doing kind of extensive surveys and research with intersex people to go, okay, maybe, you know, doctors are saying this is happening, therapists, whatever, are saying this is happening, what's really happening? So I would encourage you to kind of keep an eye on what they're doing as well. Other than that, Interact also have great resources called What We Wish Our Doctors Knew, What We Wish Our Teachers Knew, and I even think there's What We Wish Our Parents knew. So they're a really good one to check out if you still have loads of questions after this, which I'm sure you will, because you could talk about it for a week. You know.
Oh my goodness. Thank you both so much.
Yeah, there is also the Intersex Human Rights Australia site that has a lot of information too. And the one thing that must be is really important is like to get these articles. They use a lot of like human rights violations. Recently, there was a human rights violation from a doctor that in New York, that like the doctor measured the clitoral, let's say, response of babies, of children that they had done the surgery. So it was literally like sex assault in children. And like, because we are intersex, the children were intersex, it was seen as normal. So it's part of your what you're fighting for too. So it's complicated. It's like a stressful thing, like to have to fight for this change that is, you go against like doctors that are like a really strong force, and then you get together religion, the right and everything together.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's complicated, but it's also simple. I mean, when you lay it out and you look at what's actually happening and you go, you know, these surgeries we're talking about, maybe it sounds a little vague, but we're talking about gonadectomies, we're talking about clitorectomies, we're talking about vaginoplasty happening on very young kids, you know, side effects, chronic pain, loss of sexual function, trauma, dysphoria. Even before you touch any of that, you know, the kind of assignment of gender in intersex kids incorrectly, the rate of incorrect assignment of gender in intersex children is up at about 60%, according to what we know. So you just, it's complicated, and at the same time, the message is simple of scalpels down until an intersex person can kind of present in an informative way. So yeah, lots to take in there.
That's totally right. And my first few questions were all about resources, and you gave us so many already. Thank you so much. But yeah, I feel like you led me to a good question of what can the wider LGBT QIA plus community do for us, and what do they need to be doing, and yeah, what can they do?
So I suppose, like I said, include us in your discussions about human rights and know about intersex issues, and try to connect with intersex people through, you know, Intersex Island, if that's the way, but also there you can educate yourself pretty easily. There are great intersex YouTubers these days. Pigeon Pajonas, I've forgotten her surname, but Emily from Interact. You could Google this. And you can learn a lot. So education is a really big one. And I suppose other than that, be aware that sometimes because we get included in that broad LGBT acronym, intersex issues don't get to stand alone and get the proper attention separately to that they sometimes deserve. So sometimes maybe use the platform to let us speak, you know, give over that space. Sometimes I think is quite a valuable one. Don't know if you have anything to add there, Jessica.
Yeah, like today I saw a post that was like, oh, it was like LGBTI inclusive, but it was like lesbian, bisexual, intersexual. Like intersexual don't exist. You can't like intersex is an adjective. You can't use intersexual, and this has a big problem of making like intersex sounds like a gender identity or a sex orientation. And then when you see a lot of people using intersex in the middle of the word, they are talking about gender identity. They say, oh, love is love. LGBTIQ, love is love. This excludes transgender and intersex. But when you say love and gender, sex orientation and gender identity should be free and put LGBTI, you are excluding intersex in the same way. And we see a lot of exclusion of intersex in this way by a lot of like LGBTI communities. And also, I think that something that is really important is like I said before, nothing about us without us. So if you want to write about intersex people, try to find an intersex people to talk to you, so you don't write something that's wrong.
Yeah, I would definitely agree there. Like I find, you know, like Jessica says, a lot of the times people will say LGBTI and you kind of read it or you listen to what they have to say, you go to the event and you kind of like, where was the I in that? And it's forgotten. Yeah, that's kind of, it's a big one.
Oh, I was muted there for a second, sorry. No, that's a really good point, and thank you. Yeah, and yeah, it even shows like myself as someone who is intersex, there's a lot that I don't know yet. So what kind of things would you recommend to someone who's maybe even questioning whether they're intersex or not, or who have just figured out that they are, and trying to find a place anywhere, like whether it's in the community, outside the community, in our community, like
yeah, so I think and again a lot of it comes down to that kind of stigma and shame that we talked about. It's very common that you'll discover that you're intersex and then be like, shit. I don't know if I can say shit, but I just did. You'll go, you know, bugger, I don't know anyone else who's like me. What do I do? Who do I talk to? Tech support, salary swearing is fine. And so I totally get that panic. I mean, personally, I was lucky enough to already be involved in like the broader LGBT community when I discovered this about myself. And so through word of mouth, it kind of spreads. I knew someone in an organization involved in Shout Out who knew someone who happened to be intersex, connected me. I would definitely say a good place to start is getting involved in the LGBT, and in particular, if you can, the trans community, because the Venn diagram of trans and intersex people, it's close to a circle. You will likely find some people there. And if not, honestly, even just like I said, finding YouTubers and etc., it can be really, really nice, even just to be like, oh, even though they're on the internet, these are real people, you know. You can also reach out to Intersex Ireland. We're on Facebook, and we have an email address. It's intersex.ie@gmail.com, and someone can get back to you there. The other thing I would say about discovering that you're intersex is that I've often had people who are kind of at the very beginning of that journey ask me, you know, are they intersex enough? I kind of describe what their body looks like and what they've been through, etc., which I don't mind at all. But I do kind of feel like St. Peter at the gate, kind of going, am I going to let them in or not? They're waiting for me to kind of approve, are they intersex enough? And I think that's something we really need to like let go of as a community. That, like, say if you have a variation that's less obvious, that you are somehow less intersex than someone who has, a kind of very obvious physical external difference. You are no more intersex because you have kind of a pelvic difference than because you are intersex on a hormonal or chromosomal level. I think we need to let that go as well. Jessica, any other tips?
And I know that there's a lot of people that are intersex but don't think they are intersex. They don't assume like the political identity of being intersex, so they make their own communities. So you have groups of women with androgen sensibility syndrome. You have a group of women with hyperplasia, or group of men with Klinefelters, that are the name of the syndromes. That, or like, I forgot the name of the one, MKRG, like, I forgot the name, but like they have a lot of like groups for these conditions, these variations, because intersex is about 45 variations. So if you don't want to be involved in the LGBTQ community, you can look at one of these groups too, because a lot of people don't want to.
Yeah, it's such a good and important point, Jessica, and I think that I always forget to kind of say, like, people who are coming into, having a variation or whatever sometimes are a little bit intimidated by the kind of political rah, even the word intersex. And it's totally valid to, like Jessica says, want to go down, I suppose you would almost consider it a more medicalized route, like a more kind of focused on your specific variation, your specific, condition, if you want to put it that way. And even if that's a starting point for you, that's great. I mean, I was maybe 19 before I moved from I have Turner syndrome as a variation to I am intersex. So it's a valid starting point, or it's a valid ending point as well.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, thank you so much.
I just wanted to say one more thing. We have also two groups of intersex people. We have the people that were like born before the 2000, that followed like the John Hopkins, the whole money idea. And these people normally only found that they are intersex by accident, or, oh, look, a document. Oh, look, I am getting my Italian citizenship, and look at my birth certificate. What the hell is that? That was my case. So this is one group that most people find that they are intersex really older. People that are born more recently after the 2000, most of the times the doctors has a less secretive stance. Like, they still do the surgery, they still don't follow consent, but they're not like, oh, you need to change your address and register your children again, so no one knows that the children is intersex. So we have these two life experiences, and sometimes each life experience will react differently to finding that they are intersex.
Oh my goodness. Thank you. Yeah. It is a bit of a roller coaster finding it out. And yeah, doctors they're hesitant to use the word intersex as well. Like and I felt like I had to ask my doctor many times, like, am I intersex? And they're like, well, and finally, yeah. But so it's a powerful word and an intimidating one. But one of the first places I ever saw it, and this is very relevant to right now, is in newspaper articles related to the Olympics. And everything that's going on with the Olympics, and that, it's stressful, interesting, and I don't even know where to start with it. What are your thoughts and feelings on it? Because there's a lot.
Yeah, there certainly is. I think a lot of people's first introduction to the word intersex is caster semenya, a lot of the time. And I think a lot of people's kind of first exposure to what is happening to intersex people and their first learning about that is, and how negative that is through learning about, kind of sex testing at the elite kind of sporting level. Jessica, I think you know a good bit more about this than I do, so I'm gonna let you take over there.
So sex testing starts like in the 1930s, like it's very old. So they start like with genital examinations, then they go to chromosomes, then they go to then they go to gonads, then they go to chromosomes, and now it's in the whole testosterone level. I think that sex testing is one of the things that shows that like it's really hard to separate what is a male sex and a female sex. So what's happening right now, it's like if the person is sensible to testosterone, so it's not, they don't have androgen sensitivity syndrome, and they are not XX, if they have more than X, a level X of testosterone, they can't compete in certain sports. But the crazy thing is, let's say a woman that has PCOS, that's not considered medically intersex, so the doctors don't consider PCOS intersex. That woman can have this hormone level higher than the same level that caster semenya can't have. So it's crazy because it's really discriminative. And I feel you can't forget like that all of this started with, I think it was French or Canadian running hunter crying in Rio about, look at the black people that looks like male winning the competition. All started there. You can look in the YouTube, like crying caster semenya Rio, and you find it like these athletes that got like 60th place and putting up like the femaleness of caster semenya and the other two athletes that won the race. And this year in Tokyo, we have 4 athletes that were banned from the race, and all 4 athletes were black women. And all 4 athletes didn't have the look, what looks like a female thing, And it's funny because I saw yesterday some people putting up some athletes from the Chinese team of basketball because they had short hair, and because like the Chinese physiognomy is different. So, they look like male, they must be male, So we see a lot of intersection between races, what has to look like a woman and everything else in this sex testing. And also about what you talked about, intersex being a strong word. Before 2005, that is the consensus of Chicago that created the DSD, intersex and hermaphrodite were the 2 words that were used normally in articles everywhere. And then David Hamer comes up and say, look, the main case that they were using to do the surgery in babies is a hoax, is fake. I never felt like a girl. like money is lying. And some years later, the doctors make a rebranding of intersex to DSD. In my opinion, it's just for them to just keep doing the surgery. Oh, don't look about David Hamer. Forget what he said. We are doing everything different now. And they are not. So DSD is what they use just to change the word. Rebranding.
Yeah, I suppose DSD, sorry to just really quickly pick up on that last point. DSD, I feel like, is supposed to soften the blow a little bit, and it goes with this narrative that, again, you'll see in the document that I talked about, Common Arguments for Doctor, that old-fashioned surgeries were harmful, but the new things we're doing to intersex kids, they're fine, they're perfectly good. That's exactly what they're aiming to do, and that's a really good point Jessica made. But to focus on the original topic that we were on, the sex testing. I mean, I suppose, obviously, as Jessica said, it's quite fascinating to see where it crosses with sexism, where it crosses with even racism. And I think, some of the most egregious things about it is, I've heard suggestions that intersex athletes be forcibly medicated to kind of bring their hormone levels in line, which is obviously completely scandalous and not correct. And also, I mean, I think the thing that people don't consider is that we wouldn't penalize an athlete for having any other biological advantage. I mean, I think the go-to example of this is Michael Phelps. If I'm not entirely wrong, sports gays, I'm very sorry, I'm not among you. But my understanding is that Michael Phelps has a kind of advantage in the sense that he doesn't create as much lactic acid as other people. It's just a biological quirk that he has, and why is that any different than the biological quirk that Caster Semenya or any other intersex athlete has? Yeah, it's a very topical one though.
No, that was good. Oh, go ahead.
That I remember, we can see that as intersex advocates, we are winning a little in that, because in the 90s, what happened 90% of the time was that the doctors forced gonadectomy in the athletes. It's like the athletes didn't even have a chance to say no. It's like, oh, if you want to compete, you have to have a surgery and remove the gonads and everything. Now we are making noise. We have more strength. So they can't just say, oh, I will force a surgery in you for you to continue to compete.
Yeah, that is all very interesting, and it is tricky, I feel, as an intersex person to educate myself and not get overwhelmed with all the kind of negativity and the scary things. So I want to say thank you again, because you have both obviously done a lot of work, and I've got a long way to go, but I'm on that track as well. And yeah, so Anna, I suppose, what kind of resources would you like to see in an ideal world? Let's say 5-10 years. What kind of things would you like to see for the intersex community and for intersex children, and what would be the ideal?
So yeah, so first things first, I think you make a really good point about that kind of balance of learning without kind of hurting yourself almost. And I mean, Jessica will testify, the first meeting of Intersex was a 4-hour meeting, because it was part what is to be done, and part how the hell do we kind of hold each other and support each other in all of this, because it's very hard to strike that balance, and you'll never kind of have I feel with intersex stuff, you can never fully provide support without having the advocacy piece, and vice versa. So I suppose that's the first thing I'd like to see. I'd like to see Intersex Ireland grow and really strengthen itself in terms of both advocacy and support. We'd love to kind of be able to have, you know, groups for intersex people to socialize. I know, Leon, that's something that you're very interested in as well, and you're going to be doing some work on that, which is really, really exciting. But also parents and guardians, support groups for them, super, super important. I'd love to see more doctors, medical professionals, and in particular medical students, because get them while they're young, learning properly about intersex conditions, because I have had so many confused medical students in appointments with me, and also like have them learning about a holistic approach to care for intersex people, you know, going a bit beyond the scalpels down. Obviously we say scalpels down, but then we also say, you know, an intersex person who has, say, my variation Turner syndrome might also be dealing with complicated issues that also come with that, such as, you know, Turner syndrome, so problems with kidneys, problems with the heart, etc. How do we deal with someone who may have medical trauma but still needs to seek care, and that kind of holistic approach to it? And then just more space for intersex advocates in the LGBT community, I think, would be lovely to see as well. Jessica, do you want to jump in? Add?
The first thing that I really wanted to see is to see a state ban in IGM. I think that like this can sound like radical, but I don't believe that just talking to doctors would do the job. We have seen this in a lot of other activism. So we need to get from top to bottom, like to get a law that ban it, or to get to the level where we have a law to discuss it, and then they will be forced to talk to us. So I believe that, and I believe like that we need to give a lot of support for parents of the children. And I think that's really hard, because the intersex activism has to dismantle so many things, like blue for boys, you know, pinks for girls. It starts there. Like, oh, my son is intersex, which color of clothes, what did they use, and stuff. So we start in gender and sex, because everything is made for endosex bodies that are cisgender, let's say. So we need to dismantle this whole level of stuff.
Yeah, I think you're so right, Jessica. I mean, I sometimes give workshops for second and third level students on broader LGBT issues and sometimes intersex specifically. And, you know, when it comes to intersex, I kind of say, if I haven't lost you when I'm talking about trans rights, this is where I lose you, because if you can't let go of the concept of gender, then you're never going to be able to kind of accept that they've lied to you about biological sex. That biological sex is actually completely complicated. It's not, you know, blue is for boys and pink is for girls, as Jessica says. It's not XY is for boys and XX is for girls. It's actually a whole spectrum. So I think that's super important. The breakdown of homophobia, transphobia, and misogyny would go such an incredible way towards intersex liberation. Not to go all not to go radical, but I am kind of a radical on this particular issue. And yeah, Jessica, totally agree with you about just an outright legal ban. It's almost something that I forget to say as a goal, because it's so it's just so clear to me that that's what needs to happen. And it wouldn't be, I think a lot of people think that would be completely groundbreaking. It wouldn't be. Other places have done it. It's illegal in California to medically intervene on an intersex child without consent. It's illegal in Malta. There's a few other places. I can't think of off the top of my head, but it has been done, and it can be done. So yeah, I think that would be a really good start. We only want the world and all that, but
yeah, no, yeah, we just want to have a place in the world, but we may have to change the world to get that place, quite a bit. But yeah, no, there's a lot to work on, and I am so grateful that I'm on the Galway Community Pride committee this year, and I'm so grateful that I've gotten this opportunity to kind of get the ball rolling here, because I think these events should be at least yearly. But yeah, no, I'm I knew that this was going to make me emotional and, like, I don't know, all caught up. Thank you so much. But yeah, yeah, do you have anything else you want to say? I don't even know what else to ask, because you've just given me so much amazing information. Thank you.
Oh, that's really good to hear, Leon. That's really great. Just something that Sharon has put in the chat, text support. MEPs speaking about making it illegal here. Alice Mary Higgins. So that's a really, I didn't actually know that. That's a really good step in the right direction. Our experience is that there's still a really long way to go. Legally, I wasn't present at this event, but I know we were invited to speak to the Minister for Justice, if I'm correct, about the LGBT inclusion strategy. And Jessica's laughing because we were not given much of a foothold. You might tell just a minute, a little bit about that, Jessica. You were there.
So the first meeting of Intersex Ireland was really this meeting in the Department of Justice. It was about, I think it's 2 years or 5 years, I don't remember how many years, plan about LGBTQIA inclusion. So they asked for intersex people. So we all meet, we make like 10 or 12 like points that you wanted to have done. And then in the final report came like, oh, we talk about intersex and in the next one. Like we have gone there, like, but like some points, like some simple points, like things like, allow the birth certificate to have intersex, or do something about the doctors saying, oh, I only will assign a sex to the children if the children has the surgery and stuff like that, because this happens. So, like stop EIGM and stuff like that was like simple. And they like, oh, we talk about that later, But in the plus size, in the EU, recently they make, I think it's a policy for children, like a whole wide policy for children, and they put IgM in the same level of FGM. That is like banned everywhere. So that's a little gain for the intersex rights, because if we are with FGM is banned everywhere. It's sometime we will get IgM also banned everywhere.
Yeah, so we've come far and we still have very far to go. At least we're kind of in the strategy. It says we'll talk about this at some point. Yeah. I think that's, unless you have any more questions, Leon, I think we've kind of ranted enough for today. Unless
Oh yeah, no, I feel like we could go on for hours and hours.
yeah. It's one of those things where it touches so much of your life and your identity that you could talk for a day about how it affects you in the education system, and talk for a day about how it affects you seeking care in your relationships, etc., etc., etc. But what I'd encourage people to do is, use this as a starting point to do research, and above all, if you can, meet intersex people and talk to us about our lives. We are out there, we're 1.75% of the population.
Yeah, you can definitely find some of us.
You can.
We're loud enough anyway.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, no, and yes, as you were saying earlier, I am hoping to set up a bit of a social space for intersex people, and we're having our first meeting later today. So you can message the Pride page or email us for the link for that. For more information on that. And we have a full week of events. Again, this is an amazing start off point. One of our first events, one of our strongest events. Don't tell anyone else I said that. But yes, no, I am so grateful for everything that you have done, and for you coming here and chatting with me. And yeah, just ranting with me as well, and trying to figure stuff out. Yeah, and thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for the opportunity to talk.